All right, here we go. You see the gloves, you know what we're going to do. We're going to tame the gorilla. Tame the gorilla. That is the Gorilla Glue. So let's get ready for that. One of the issues that people have with Gorilla Glue is it gets clogged up like this. Well, sure. Okay, so we have this blob of stuff, and normally this would be an issue, and those of you that make wooden boxes and stuff, you know that it can be a problem trying to keep everything together while you're doing a glue up on it. But if you follow the sequence that I've laid out, you'll find that it's really not that bad. And then again, we did a dry fit, right? So we know these are going to work. So now if I put glue on, I know I'm going to be okay. And so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get a brush. And if you buy brushes, you got to make sure that you get the good kind, because the cheap ones cannot hold up to Gorilla Glue. So they have to be Gorilla Glue tolerant. That's all part of taming the gorilla. So I'm going to go ahead and use those. I wonder why I have Gorilla Glue all over my camera and my clothes. But if you look at the instructions, it also suggests that you use Gorilla Glue on the ends for two reasons. One is for the adhesion, right? Part of the joinery. But the other reason is that those joints are going to be seen, and I like joints to look good. And so by putting the Gorilla Glue on there and the expandability of that, and if you notice, I'm brushing it, not just setting it there, right? I want to brush it, and I want to brush it from the inside towards the outside. And what that does, and I want to make sure I cover every square cubic inch of that, because if there's any deficiencies at all where it's going to butt up to the other piece, then the Gorilla Glue in most cases will just expand enough to fill that, and it's a stainable, varnishable material. So by doing this, we're good to. Okay, again, following the sequence, and again, these are symmetrical, so it doesn't make a difference, but the sequence tells you, you got to keep moving on this. And because the glue only has a certain amount of setup time, right? That's another advantage to Gorilla Glue, is the setup is a lot longer. So you do have more time. It stays lubricated for a much longer time than regular wood glue. Now I'm putting that in there. This is eventually going to be in the clamp. And the front and the back are symmetrical, so it doesn't make any difference which one I put where. But by doing it on these clamps right now, I've got a little bit of a working surface. And you can, if you notice, this is a MikroBench, right? Let me just back off a second. That's a MikroBench. That's mounted on some of that Harbor Freight scaffolding, US General type scaffolding. There's two bolts that go into it. I could take this off from that in maybe about 2 to 3 minutes at the most. But look at the clamp isn't solid. But these two center clamps are actually locked down with U-bolts, and so those aren't going to. So I can have a bunch of other clamps that are going to be loose like this, but the material itself, even if it's cantilevered quite a ways out, is not going to fall out. So do I have enough room in there? I'm getting a little tight right there. I'm just going to loosen the clamps up. You need more space at the beginning because of the dado, right? So even though you're clamping something that on the outside is 11 inches, you need probably 11 3/4 inches to get the material in there initially. So I'm doing that. You can see why this MikroBench is so handy, right? Now I can put that in there. It's in the, I'm trying to get the best view I can for you. It's in the dados all the way around. Okay, now if I just take my wrench and then just start to snug. I don't have to do them all yet by any means, but I'm snugging and then aligning, snugging and aligning, snugging and aligning. So I'm going to snug over here. So I can still move it. If it doesn't fit, if shoe doesn't fit, anyhow, there you go. Now, I could square it up. You normally would. That's a pun, play on words there. But you normally would square it up if it's a regular box, but we're going to square it up with the top itself. So again, I'm just getting those just slightly snug because I don't want to tighten them all up yet, but I don't want them to move on me either. Okay, and I'm only doing the outside ones for right now. Now I'm going to go, well, now it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, this is the cool thing about this. It's not going to go anywhere. And so now what I can do is take my top, and I have to go get my splines. I forgot those. Again, I'm going to get glue on the button on the GoPro. Huh? Okay, so there were a couple of mistakes I made on the design part, and then sometimes you just don't realize until you do actually do this. But this dado, it actually interferes with these holes. These holes are meant for a vise to go through, and so it's kind of screwing things up. But it is what it is for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little bit of glue. I'm going to put some Gorilla Glue in there. Then I'm going to put some Gorilla Glue on the top of that. I'll do that to all four. Okay, now that would be kind of enough to hold it, but I'm going to also put Gorilla Glue on the surfaces as well because I want that Gorilla Glue to ooze out, because wherever or if ever there is a tight, or excuse me, any kind of gap at all, or just a deficiency in the wood, that Gorilla Glue in most cases will fill it out. And this is where I'm going to use the brush again. Okay, so up until now, the components have mostly been symmetrical. So the spreaders, either way would be fine. The back and the front are the same. Once you have that dado in there, you really can't get it wrong because the dado is there, and if you put it on backwards, the floor wouldn't go in. But actually pretty cool looking floor when you think about it. Huh. Hope I didn't use the wrong floor. I think I might have used the floor from some oak. Oh, this is the oak one. Okay, I'm getting it mixed up. I have two different projects going at the same time. One of them is a one board contest project. But anyhow, so now I have those dados on the back there, right? Remember, we did dry fit this, so things shouldn't have changed. But the orientation on this is important because the back here is where those mortises are that are going to lead up to, the risers are going to take it up to the second tray, right? So now it's just a matter of, and this is why I didn't want to over tighten anything. In fact, I may even have to loosen it up. Oh, maybe not. How about that? Again, for those of you that make wooden boxes, you know that it can be pretty difficult to get to this point because things are flying all over the place on you. So I just need to kind of deal with that a little bit. Dawn on me until just now, but just think how much that MikroBench is absorbing, because I'm hitting it with a hammer and I've got the clamps on there and everything else, and it didn't even blink an eye, right? This is a really, really stable thing. So now again, I'm gonna start gradually. I'm gonna keep my gloves on for a little while because I'm always gonna end up touching the glue, but I'm gonna start snugging these a little bit more. But then as I do that, I'm also going to be constantly watching, like right here it's tight, but there it's not, right? So if I tighten that too much, I'm not going to be able to move it anymore. Whereas right now, again, because that glue is still wet, if you're catching that, and that's why I have the gloves are still on. Now I have a perfect joint. So it just saves you all that work later of having to sand or whatever you're going to, however you would normally finish that off. So again, I've got this one just right. This one is really, really close. And again, the bench itself is becoming square because the top squared it off for me. So now I can go ahead and tighten this end. The other end is still loose, but if you notice, it's starting to come together now. I'm seeing a little bit of movement on this side. Can I still move that? Yes, I can. All right, and this is what I'm saying in the sequence is as you tighten it, you kind of alternate around. I've got a good thing there. And if you leave any part of it sticking out at all, or you want to leave the part that you can just tap in, look at that. And so again, I'm not going to have to grind or sand or anything those edges. And now I'm getting those really, really tight. And I can get them even tighter later by putting another clamp here and here. And then there's also some screws. So now I'm going to go down and work on the other end. Now tell me this isn't cool. I'm actually using the MikroBench that's being built to help build itself, because I'm putting the clamp in here. So I want to push that top down, and this does have a rubber thing on it, so I'm not going to be a plastic thing, so I'm not going to be concerned. But I'm using the MikroBench, the holes, the crevice or the cavities, to go ahead and tweak that. And then the splines are going to hold this from moving too much, but and I should use a rubber hammer, I know. But now I've got that one lined up. And again, I don't like to depend, we're going to put screws in there, but I don't like to depend on the screws to do the power up. Instead, I'd rather get it all in position. Got another one here. This one is actually in a little bit. So we're good to go on that. I'm going to do the back sides. Okay, if you noticed, I used a Festool clamp on the back side. They actually don't work as well as the Bessies on this kind of stuff because they just don't sit flat. They're meant to be on a table, whereas if they have a smaller edge, they kind of want to work their way in. But now we're going to get some screws. Okay, so for these, I'm going to be kind of close to the edge here. It is, so I definitely, a couple of things. I don't want to take a chance, even though these are the best screws in the whole world, and they have kind of a cutter, they're not kind of, but they do have basically a drill bit at the top. But I'm still going to use a starter, and I'm going to punch that in there. I'm going to do one here. I think there's a couple more. I know there's definitely one on each corner, and then I think I have to look at the drawings, but I think I have one somewhere else here and here. No, it has to be somewhere where it doesn't interfere with one of these guys down below. So I'll look at the drawings and see where they are. And then I have made a couple of changes to this since I even made it, but I'm going to go down with that, and then I'm going to go into this wood, and then for this one I'm going to use a number 9 by 2.5. That 2.5 is going to take it down. Remember the first, not the inch, because it's going to go down in your ways, but it's going to go down that far. I could probably get by with a smaller screw, but that's what I happen to have right now, so I'm going to go ahead. For these, if you have an impact driver, that's where you're going to want to use them for sure. It just does a much nicer job. And I can tell you this, you don't want to use gloves, rubber gloves, latex gloves, when you're using these screws, because the head, there's a cutter up on top there. It grabs onto your glove and then it spins it on your hand. It's not pretty. Anyhow, so and remember, those are self-tapping. Now, I could see some additional ooze, which means that the screw is doing what it's supposed to do, but most of the pressure is still on the clamps themselves. So I'm going to do the rest of the screw. Okay, since I have the glue out, and I've got it everywhere, right, including on my fingers and on my GoPro camera, but I'm going to put just a tiny bit in each one of these holes. And it does two things. One is it's going to hold it in. You have to be a little careful because it can also push, Gorilla Glue will push the dowel out on you. because of the expansion on it, whereas regular wood glue does not. But it is what it is. So the nice thing about doing it now is that I've got glue all over the place anyhow, and later on, when I clean up, then I can go ahead and I'll clean up for these as well. So this one, when you use these, if you haven't already, you just can't go in too far because you can't get them back out. So just make sure you, and if you don't go in far enough, they're a real bear to sand because these are black walnut, I think, or something, or maybe oak. But you really want to get them perfectly flush. That's the ticket. So there we go. That's the way she's gonna be for about, normally I would do it overnight. Today I'm not gonna be able to do that because I want to put a coat of varnish on it yet tonight so that it can dry overnight. That first coat always takes a lot longer time. And then I'm actually gonna be able to, once that glue sets a little bit, I believe I'm gonna probably go ahead and test my risers once I make those, so I can test that all while it's still on the clamp system. So there you go.